Morning. In the meantime, I'm waiting for my presentation to come. I'm a research fellow at the Emirates Diplomatic Academy. So what I do, I'm looking at the new trends in diplomacy, and one of the new trends is city diplomacy. That's what we'll be talking about today. Okay, so in the meantime, I will start without the presentation. That's interesting if you're talking at a smart city conference, then the technology is not working. But yeah, so what I'm going to talk about is city diplomacy. So what we see these days is that cities taking up a much prominent role in the international field. So my presentation will first go like, why do we need smarter cities? Then I'm going to talk about the increasing role of cities, and then I'm going to give a few examples of city-to-city cooperation. In the meantime, I'm going to try to figure it out myself. For smart cities, and I already talked about myself. So what we're going to talk about is, first of all, why do we need smarter cities? Then 5 dimensions of cooperation, as I said. Then the cities, how they become more global actors. And then at the end, I'll go to the recommendations. Okay, so first things first, why do we need smarter cities? Why do we need smarter cities? I'll give you 5 examples. First, urbanization. So what we see is at the moment, half of the population is already living in cities. Now, by 2050, it's 3/4, so 75%. Second of all, if you see this in exact numbers, 180,000 people are moving on daily basis to cities. That's like 2 citizens every second. So for a moment I started my presentation with the technology failure. That means already 600 people moved to cities by I started presenting this. Now, economic value. What we see is the economic value of cities are increasing as well. At the moment, if you take 600 cities, they generate 60% of the global GDP. Now, to give you more exact examples, it's the GDP of New York is bigger than the GDP of Spain. The GDP of Sao Paulo is bigger than Argentina, Uruguay, Paraguay together. Third, the GDP of Guangdong in China is bigger than Russia. So this just shows that the economical value of cities are increasing. Then environment. Now, when cities becoming smarter, this also brings challenges with it. Now, one of the challenges, as also already mentioned before, is environment. Now, if you think about 70% of the global CO2 is coming from cities, and 80% of the total energy is used by cities itself. So again, this shows like it's not only the good things, but also brings a lot of challenges with it. And one of them is environment. Now, mobility. If you look at specifically at the GCC, only 50% of the journeys in the GCC are made by public transportation. So that means for 85%, we're not using public transportation. Now, that's like just how to transport, but also the surface of the city itself is often dominated by mobility. So if you take 30% of the urban surface is devoted to roads, and 20% is off-site parking. So that means half of the city is dedicated to mobility. Now, then for the last one, that 6 out of 10 in high-income countries are using the car for transportation. Oh, sorry, have a car. So again, that shows like besides environment, also mobility is one of the challenges of smarter cities. Now, this is going to be very hard to read in the back, I think, but this is just what I want to show with population and GDP growth, specifically for the GCC. So I took a figure of 2010 and 2025. Now, if you see there how the population is going to grow, for Abu Dhabi only it's going to be 100% growth. If you take Dubai, it's going to be 90% growth. So that means that in 15 years, the population in Abu Dhabi is going to double, and in Dubai almost going to double. Now, as well for the GDP, if you look at the GDP, for Abu Dhabi we have 162%, and for Dubai we have 150%. So also the GDP is immensely increasing. Now, why I'm showing these figures, because I want that you compare it with New York. New York is one of the cities that we always see as a traditional smart city. Now, if you see there, the population growth is only 4%, and the GDP is 32%. So then, what I want to show with this slide is just to see, like, look, smart cities, yes, that's every city is working on this. But for the region itself, for the GCC, it's even more important because they have even bigger challenges. If you have a population growth of 100%, that means that the smart city even has to be smaller. Okay, now what I want to do now is I'm going to talk about 5 dimensions of cooperation. Now I decided not to take the traditional one, so I'm not going to talk about environment and mobility because these are already cooperations where city to cities are working together. I'm going to go for the ones that are not so traditional. First of all, security. This is an example of Abu Dhabi police working together with NYPD. So what they did is after 9/11, they signed a memorandum of understanding to work closer together. Why? Because they understand that by sharing information with each other, they will benefit both. So what they did, they working together on police training, on crime prevention, on counterterrorism, and expertise exchange. So in the picture you see below on the left, that's actually one of the Abu Dhabi police forces who actually went to New York for a training, and that's the memorandum of understanding signing. So that just means, with this one I want to show, like, look, security is a field that you don't immediately expect that cities would work together, but we see cities are working together. And why are they doing this? It's also in line with the vision of the UAE, the vision of 2021 to make UAE the safest place in the world. According to the World Economic Forum, they're already on the 2nd place, so that means that they're almost there to reach the goal of becoming the safest city or the safest country in the world itself. Second, judicial. Also a field that you don't immediately expect city to city working together. Now the example I use here is the Dubai International Financial Court, not so far away from here. So what happened is that Dubai realized, like, look, we have so many businesses that we attract, but we don't have a judicial system in place specifically for financial questions and so on. So what they did, they created the Dubai International Financial Court. Now, when they created it 2 years later, so created 2004, 2006, they realized, like, okay, but we have so many we have so many elements or so many players in the different countries that we have to start to work together with other courts as well. So what they did, they signed memorandums of understanding with US District Court of New York, the Commercial Court of England, and I can keep on going. So why did they do this? Is because that means that they would actually want to recognize the judgment of the International Financial Court is going to be recognized in New York, and the ones that are made in New York is going to be recognized here in the UAE. So that actually gives confidence. When you want to come to invest in the UAE, in Dubai, that actually gives confidence that you know, like, even if you have to go to court here, that actually gives you confidence that that it would be recognized here, but also it would be recognized outside of the UAE. Now, why did they do this? It's like to boost trade and attract even more investment. So that's a second example of city-to-city cooperation. Now, the third one is culture. I chose Abu Dhabi Louvre because they opened last weekend. So what you see there is that also cities to cities are going to work together on different fields. So on this one is then on the culture field. So what they did, they signed an agreement with the Paris Louvre that they're going to help them with establishing the museum, with architecture, with the pieces that they're going to be on display and so on. So that's actually a city-to-city cooperation. Why they're doing this is because in this way they get the expertise of the Paris Louvre here, and this is going to be good for them. For the Louvre itself is going to be good because their name is going to be associated with an institution within the UAE, within the Middle East, and for Abu Dhabi Louvre to put on the name of Louvre, it will also attract more people to come to the museum in the first place. Now the fourth one is representation, and now by going over these examples, I'm coming all the time closer and closer to what I really want to talk about, and that's city diplomacy. So what we see as well is that cities, they start representing themselves on the international forum. Now, one of the examples here is London, because London, they have offices abroad. They have offices in Shanghai, Beijing, and Mumbai. So why do they do this? Is because you have an embassy there. You have investors there of the UK and so on. But what they do specifically is they're going to represent London. So that means that they're going to represent all the products, in this one, the financial products that you can have in London itself, to actually even attract more people to go to invest in London, but also for the people who wants to do the other way around. So that means that people from London itself who want to invest in Shanghai, Beijing, and Mumbai can also go to these offices. So why do they do this? Is, like I said, promote UK-based financial services, strengthen UK international trade and investment, and so on. But what they do as well, they're going to set up round tables, and so on. So you have to see it like an embassy specifically for a city itself. And that's also new, because like 10, 15 years ago, you wouldn't have this. Because that means at that time, it would be the embassy itself would take up this role. So what we see now is that also cities itself start representing themselves on the international forum. Now the last one is a network. City-to-city cooperation is bilateral, meaning that it's one city working together with another city. Now what we see as well is that cities start creating their own United Nations. What I want to say with this, they start creating their own networks to work closer together. Now at the moment there are already 125 multilateral networks. So multilateral subnationals, that means on a lower level, not on a national level, networks that are working together. Now they can work together on specific topics, like for example on climate as the climate leadership group, but also can be regional, like for example United Cities and local governments, or the ones who are in Europe itself. So why are they doing this? Why are they gathering together? Why are they actually associating themselves with a bigger identity to actually to be represented? And why is this? Is because they can actually exchange their expertise. By going to these forums, then they can learn from each other. They can learn from which applications did work in your city, which applications can I try to do in my city. So that's as well, this is actually increasing the role of the local government. So again, what you see happening is here that cities itself start taking up roles that are traditionally given to a federal government itself. Okay? Now, the question then is like, why does ministries are letting this happen? So why does the Ministry of Foreign Affairs is okay with cities taking up a more prominent role? And the answer is very simple, because like when a city is growing, that means as well that the country is growing. If we take the example of the Expo 2020, if the Expo is going to be good for Dubai, the Expo is going to be good for UAE, the Expo is going to be good for the whole region. So that's why the Ministry of Foreign Affairs is actually okay with the fact that the city is going to play a more prominent role on the international forum. And also because cities, it's much more than city branding and foreign direct investment. Cities these days, if you just look at the role of the city leader, for example, like it's a more prominent role. Like if we, like 30, 40 years ago, who would know who is the mayor of New York? How many people would know this? So that means what we see is that the role of the municipal leader, of the mayor itself, becomes much more important. If you see as well that they start associating themselves with other cities on the international forum, that means that they are increasing their influence. So that means as well that why is this happening is because cities are going to be much more efficient on a subnational level. So it means that there are certain issues that a city has to deal with that every city has to deal with. So that means for these elements, it's much better to do it on a lower level. If, for example, if you do waste management, and you're going to do it for the whole country, the same principles and so on, it's not going to work. So that's why they let it go on a lower level, on a subnational level, so because it's going to be much more efficient for the city to do it there. Now, the last example I want to give is that cities as well, they start having their green papers, white papers. So that means that they are behaving as a country itself. They start having associations with other cities, they start having associations with other countries. And one of the examples I can give you of that as well is like with the change in the US with President Trump in charge, but also going to create a boost for cities itself. Because there are certain areas where President Trump is not going to be working on, like for example on climate change. So that means for these areas, cities will going to play a more prominent role to do so. Now, I'm coming to my last slide, the recommendation itself. So, first of all, we have to encourage citizen participation. And I think like also Samir pointed this out, a city can be as smart as it is, you can have all the IoT, you can have everything in place, but if the citizens are not using these technologies, then the city is not smart in the first place. So that means, first of all, we have to concentrate on citizen participation. We have to make sure that citizens are using it, but also that the ideas are coming from the citizen itself. And you have maybe Samir can help me with this, it's like the mashless. It's like where they're collecting all IDs in Dubai. Smart mashless?
Smart mashless.
Exactly. So with these IDs, that means that they're collecting IDs from citizens itself. Because a citizen itself is going to know much better what's needed in a city than somebody who is standing further away from it. If you imagine in the neighborhood you're living, you're going to be an expert to know what should be changed in this neighborhood to make it smarter. Then attract talent and fund education. Now, attract talent is one part of it to become a smarter city, but also we have to invest a lot in education itself. And one of the examples is the smart city school in Barcelona. So what they do there, so right from a young age, they start actually from when they go to school, from 4 or 5 years until 18, they're already exposed to a lot of new ideas of smart cities and technology itself. So this is a way how to actually implement the smart city strategies in education itself. Then create platforms. And this can be platforms like this, where we have people of different fields coming together, presenting and discussing how a smart city should be. So invest in global events. Why I'm saying this is because like what you see when a city is investing or a country is investing in global events, it really gives a boost for innovation. It really attracts people to go to the city itself, but also the city itself will be more stimulated to actually get more innovative ideas and so on. So that's why it's really good to invest in global events. Then private-public partnerships, but that's also something that the next speaker will be talking about more. That means as well that you have, it's impossible that a government itself, all the ideas has to come from them. So what I mean with this is that it has to work together with the public sector, it has to work together with the private sector to get the best ideas to be developed. Then outsource global outreach offices. So the representation of London, the example I gave you before, what you see as well is that this is actually not done by the city anymore, it's actually done by the private sector. So that means that the private sector is actually going to invest in these offices abroad. Why are they doing this? It's because they will attract funding for their project, they will make the right connections and so on. So that's why I say outsource global outreach offices. Then the next one is diplomatic cooperation. You have a lot of embassies, you have a lot of consulates here in the UAE. Also in every country, in every other country. So that means you could also use their expertise, meaning that if you're going to organize round tables, if you're going to get them together with the ideas that they bring from their cities. Like if you have at the moment, I think you have around 100 embassies, 100 consulates here in Dubai itself. So that means like if you bring all these people together, they can share their ideas that they are having and the expertise that they have from their countries itself. Then extend bilateral agreements. Dubai has at the moment 28 sister cities. So that means a sister city is a city where you work close together with. Now what I recommend as well is you're going to work together on different fields. So that means like not only to work together on cultural exchange, but also work together on mobility, on exchanging expertise, and so on. And then the last one is to increase the multilateral role, because what we see is that the cities in the region itself, they don't have a prominent role in these multilateral forums. So what would be the recommendation as well, to make sure that these cities, or that the cities inside the GCC actually play a more prominent role in these forums itself, because by taking up a leading role in it, you will also learn a lot from the other cities. I hope I didn't take too much from your time. In case you still have questions, please drop me an email. And that's it. Thank you very much. Oh, sorry, any questions?
We'll have some questions to ask you.
If you ask questions and nobody is raising a hand, it can be two issues. Or it was so good explained that everyone understands it, or it wasn't at all. So I'm not sure which one to go into. Ah, question, good. Ooh, safe.
You mentioned among your recommendation, encourage citizen participation. Did you take any specific step, or did you think of a specific way to encourage it, or is it just a generic headline like that?
Yeah, no, like look, in case with, and that's also what Samir already talked about, it's like, look, if you have all the technology in place, it's not going to work. So that means you have to get the citizen itself to actually come up with the ideas. And then we have this smart majlis that Dubai created, I think, now over a year ago. Yeah. So, and by doing so, they got over 100,000 ideas of citizens itself. Now, you have to imagine that, suppose that you come up with an idea, yeah, and you send it to the smart majlis, and they're actually going to execute this idea. That means I'm going to be very motivated, no? I will tell, like, look, it's actually my idea that they're going to take forward. And that's why it's so important to have citizen participation, because it's not only that the ideas are coming from them, it's also the ones who has to use these smart technologies that are out there as well. And then, of course, then to go back again, and last time I'm going to do this, Samir, to go back to your presentation, is also the data that they will collect with this. By having all the, by having the participants or the citizen actually participating in the new ideas that are out there, they will also collect the data, and they will improve this again in the next stage. Thank you very much.